I have been a fan of Let's Not Meet stories for some time now. The majority of kidnapping/attempted kidnapping stories I read tend to happen to females. As a man in his 20s, I thought I should share the 3 times I was almost kidnapped while growing up. The first story happened when I was 4 or 5 years old. This happened to be one of my earliest memories. So, one summer, my grandparents would invite my immediate family to go camping with them. They have an RV just big enough to cram us all in. We RV camped at a place called Goose Pond in North Alabama. During this trip, my grandpa taught me how to ride a bike without training wheels. After many tries and fails, I was actually able to ride my bike pretty well. So, out of excitement, I asked my parents if my brother, who was a few years older than me, and I could go for a ride on our bikes. They said we could ride this short loop where about 60% of the loop can be seen from the RV. So me and my brother grabbed our bikes and took off. While riding around the loop, nothing eventful happened until we reached the final turn. This turn was barely out of view from my parents and the RV. So, when my brother and I turned the loop, a car pulled up behind us, so we got off our bikes and stepped off the road to let the car pass. When the car got parallel to us, it stopped. A man from the car rolled down his window and started talking to us. He said something along the lines of,
"I have candy in my car if you want some. Just come over here. I'll give you a piece."
Ignorant young me took a step in the man's direction. As soon as I took that step, my brother grabbed my shoulder and said, "Let's go back to the RV." As soon as we pedaled away, the man drove off. This second story happened when I was 10. For some background information, in my small hometown, the Civic Center basically shares a parking lot with the baseball fields. So my family was at the Civic Center to watch my little sister graduate from preschool. The graduation was around 5 p.m., and I had a baseball game at the fields next door at 7. So after the graduation, I asked my parents if I could walk across the parking lot to find my team while they cleaned up, and they gave me their blessing. As soon as I walked out the front door and turned to head to the baseball fields, I saw 2 men loitering in the parking lot. They saw that I was alone and asked me to come over to them. Me being oblivious to danger, I said that I need to get to my game that started soon. They asked if I play baseball and why my parents would let someone like me walk all by myself. They offered to walk with me, and I replied, "No thanks, I'm just going to the baseball fields." When they noticed I wasn't cooperating as they hoped, one of the men lunged in my direction and grabbed at me. Luckily, I was far enough away that he didn't get to me, and I took off. I don't think I have ever run faster in my entire life before this. Luckily, the men didn't run after me, and I found my team moments later. When my parents got to the field, they were panicking to find me. Apparently, someone reported those men to those in the Civic Center, and my parents were scared to death that they got me. My last story happened when I was 14. Again, as background information, my house is next to a major highway with several gas stations and a convenience store within walking distance. My hometown is one of the safest towns in the state. Close to this incident, my town was ranked one of the 25 safest towns. Because of this, my parents didn't mind if I walked to the store to grab some snacks, as long as I asked permission first. So, one day, I was walking to the store. Nothing happened on the way down there, so I walked into the store to buy some snacks. On the way back, I noticed a truck driving by me. When he passed, I looked up and saw the man driving was staring right at me. He wasn't paying attention to the road, just me. So he passed me and I saw him turn around at the entrance of the neighborhood by my house and start heading back in my direction. At this time, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I see people turning around there all the time. When he drove by me the second time, he was going noticeably slower than the first time and was staring me down. When he got parallel to me, he stopped and opened his door to try to grab me. God must have been looking out for me, because as soon as he did, a car pulled up behind him and forced him to continue down the road. As he drove away, I watched him and saw him turn around again and start heading in my direction. At this point, I was panicking. I took off behind my neighbor's house and hopped the fence into my backyard and went inside my house. I remembered I was home alone and the terror started to sink in. I immediately rushed to the window to see the man carefully scanning the area where he last saw me. He was looking for me. He stayed in his car, going so slow that it took him what seemed like 5 minutes to pass my house. When he started to pass my house, I noticed he was trying to see through my windows from the road. I ducked down and hid, only looking through the bottom corner of the window. Eventually, I saw him speed off, never to return again. As a boy growing up, people never thought these types of things could happen. It is a mystery to me how I was able to avoid kidnappers 3 times. Most people aren't that lucky. To all the young people and parents hearing this, it doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl, predators are everywhere. And to my attempted kidnappers, I hope we never meet again. Okay, so this happened in 2016, when I was a 17-year-old first-year college student in film school. I'm now a 22-year-old female. Name is Julia. I lived alone in my first ever apartment. It was really small, but I was really proud of my independence. I never felt unsafe in this apartment for several reasons. There were multiple gates in the residence that needed to be opened through a code that only people who lived there knew. My door had 3 different locks, but it was right next to the university, so most people who lived in the neighborhood were college students. Nothing bad ever happened in the neighborhood before. I've always been very careful with locking the door when I leave my home. I always check twice. I have slide OCD. So, this one time, I leave to go to class and lock my door, but for some reason, I couldn't get the key out of the lock. It was completely stuck. So I went to the caretaker of the building to help me, but he wasn't there, and I was getting late for class. So I went to class with the key still in the lock. I took off the keychain first, so it wasn't too noticeable. When I got home, the caretaker was back, so he came to help me, but we couldn't get it out for 15 minutes, until somehow he did. He told me the lock was damaged, but that I didn't necessarily need to change it if I only locked it once, instead of twice. I just said okay, and that was the end of it. I really wasn't worried because of how safe I felt this building was. Flash forward to 2 months later. I was taking out the trash one night around 11 p.m. while on the phone with my sister. I remember telling her that I was taking out the trash, then I would be taking a shower before heading to a party. As I previously stated, I always lock the door, even just to take out the trash. Because of my lock being damaged, I only locked it once. When I got back to my apartment, I found that the door was unlocked, which immediately alarmed me. So, I went into the apartment and locked the door immediately with 3 different types of locks. When you walk into my apartment, which is only 215 square feet. You have the main room in front of you, and the bathroom door immediately to your left. I had left the bathroom door slightly open, enough so I could see a man in my shower, turning his back to me. Naturally, when I saw this, I tried to open the door and leave as fast as possible, except my main lock was damaged from 2 months earlier, and I couldn't open it no matter how hard I tried. In this moment, all I could think of was the fact that I had to leave as fast as possible. I jumped out the window without really thinking. I figured it was the only solution, except I lived on the 2nd floor, so I completely smashed my ankles in the landing. I started running in whichever way I could, and when I got a little bit further from the building, I looked back and the man was there, at my window, watching me run away. I thought of 2 possible outcomes. Either the man was going to jump and chase me, except I wouldn't get far with my twisted ankles, or he would get scared of the height and be locked in my apartment. Thankfully, he picked option 2. I went to hide in a bush a little further and called the police, who arrived in just 10 minutes because I lived close to the station. They pushed my door open and the man was just sitting on my couch, holding a kitchen knife, just waiting for me to come back, like he didn't think I would call the police. They arrested the guy and later told me that he had already been arrested for sexual assault, rape, attempted kidnapping, and attempted murder. They also told me how everything had happened. Like I said, it was a very friendly neighborhood with mostly college students, so he got inside the building by other people holding the door for him. He then heard me telling my sister I was going to take a shower, which was why he was waiting in my bathroom. He picked my lock while I was taking out the trash. He apparently noticed me on school campus and followed me to my home several times before succeeding to actually come in. He stayed inside waiting for me because I had recently changed my phone and the previous one was still on the table, so he thought I didn't have a phone with me to call the police. I don't live there anymore, but after that, to get into the building, we all needed identification proving that we lived there. Building IDs were created, and we had to scan them every time, and it was the only way to go inside of the building. Nothing bad happened in the neighborhood after that. It's back to being very peaceful and friendly. I think I just escaped death. This morning, I just got out of class and was headed home. I then saw a crippled old lady begging for help and telling me that she needed to get into her apartment. I helped her, took an elevator, and took her to her door. To my surprise, the door was wide open. When I went inside, she asked me if I could go to a nearby shop for her and buy some wine and cigarettes. She then proceeded to give me her credit card and keys and insisted on the fact that I should leave my bag in her house. I said no thank you. Even though the situation was weird, it wasn't that scared me the most. It was the inside of the apartment. There was no decorations, no pictures or anything. It was disgusting. There was some kind of chair with excrements on it, and the walls were filled with cracks. I got scared and took the card and the keys, tried to act as normal as possible, and then I wanted to test it to see if the card was real. I went to the store and the woman said that the card wasn't a real one. It was at this moment that I decided not to go to her house and gave the keys and the card to the police. A friend of mine told me that she saw the exact same lady saying the exact same things she told me, and the scariest thing is that she saw a man bring her outside and immediately go inside her apartment. I have had several dreams similar to the story I'm about to tell. I've been a caver in Florida for about 13 years, since I was about 6, and have been to a lot of caves. Never been afraid before this to go into one. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I started having this reoccurring dream. I would have it at least twice a year, always the same, even though I would realize I was dreaming after the first few iterations. I would fall asleep and dream of being in a cave and going into this little hole in the bottom. Inside, I would see a 10 to 15 foot long corridor, about 2 to 4 feet high. At the end of it, I would always turn left, and I always saw a bent red stop sign at the end, like someone ripped off the top 2 feet and tossed it in. I would turn and walk past the sign, despite being scared, despite many times knowing what was there, and the corridor would start descending, quickly opening up into a large vertical chamber with the path leading down in a corkscrew. Everything became blurry at this point, but it was always the same. I saw trash scattered on the walls. I saw the pit leading down to a curved floor. I saw things, undefined, animals or people or something else at the bottom. And I saw my family, each with one of the things, being tortured and killed every time, and I could never do anything. After I saw that, I would be stuck for a few seconds until I felt more, then saw everything turn around and look at me. Then I would wake up. Not like a normal dream where you just drift into consciousness, or a nightmare where you bolt up in fear, but like something pushed me out, like I wasn't supposed to be there. So, I had this dream multiple times a year, until I turned 15. I did tell a friend about the dream before what happened next. My father decided to take us to some caves we had never been before, one of which was Dog Drop. It was likely named so because someone either threw their pet in there or a coyote fell and the body was later discovered. Dog Drop had a roughly 30-foot rappel straight down to enter. I went down with my brother while my father waited up at the top. There was a hole in the ground. I started to feel uneasy, though I didn't know why. So I followed my brother into the hole. I felt worse as I moved down. I saw the same corridor, the same turn, the same wall, the same bottles at the corner, and I instantly was hit with this overwhelming sense of nausea and fear and being watched, and everything was screaming at me to leave. I froze and must have made some noise because my brother turned around and asked me what was wrong. I managed to say I wanted to leave now and climbed out as quickly as I could, followed immediately by my brother. We packed up and left, never have gone back, and never will. I haven't told anyone what actually happened. I just said that I wasn't feeling well, and they forgot pretty quickly. The thing that really makes it creepy for me is that I have never had that dream again. Year after year, I would have it consistently, but it just stopped after that. But I still remember it all, and I still feel afraid, almost an external fear, when I think of it.